Hello and welcome to the Scuttlebutt, the show for current and former service members looking to life outside of the military. I'm your host, Brock Briggs, and today I'm speaking with Paul Szoldra. After Paul's exit from the Marine Corps in 2010, he fell into journalism, where he went on to write for publications like Business Insider, We Are the Mighty, and later became the editor at Task and Purpose. He's the founder of the popular military satire newsletter, Duffel Blog, and late this last year went full-time on a solo newsletter, The Ruck, a weekly national security newsletter. In this conversation, Paul talks about why everyone has the ability to create through writing, with heuristics on getting started, the origins of Duffel Blog and his early insight into content marketing, and going solo as a writer with some of the tools he uses in this process. I'd highly recommend checking out Duffel Blog and The Ruck if you haven't already. I'm a subscriber to both, and hearing this conversation will give you even more appreciation for those. Please enjoy this conversation with Paul Szoldra. One of the things that I like to start off with is more of a personal question, just to kind of get to know you a little bit better. Is there something that you're really, really proud of, but maybe don't get to talk to a lot of people or tell them about?
I don't know. I guess on a personal note, I don't talk about this very often, but I'm really proud of my kids. I'm really proud of my family, and that's it's not something that really ever comes up in any kind of forum or any kind of professional kind of. I guess this is professional-ish, um, but but my kids are awesome, and they're really smart, and they're creative, and they're fun, and they're growing up, and they're they they give me a lot of joy. So that's definitely my answer there. And and hopefully we'll give my wife a smile and approving nods.
That's that's a great answer. And I love hearing stuff like that because it really gives you an idea about what people think is important. Because there is, like you said, in a professional capacity, you are always being asked about maybe like work accomplishments or things like that, but get an idea about what people really care about when it comes to things that they're proud of. So that's cool. You spent a good amount of time, around 8 years or so, in the Marines. How do you think that you will position the Marines to your kids?
The answer to this question has is sort of ebbed and flowed, I suppose. I think when I first joined the military, and how I would have positioned that to my kids, I'm moto. I love the Marine Corps. The Marine Corps is awesome. This is the coolest job ever. The being a infantry squad leader, is best job in the world. This kind of vibe and mindset. Um, but it wasn't all sunshine and roses, being in the Marine Corps. And I got out of the Marine Corps um, before I made it a career. That certainly says something. Um, so I've sort of struggled with the answer to this question on. It's sort of like, would you support your kids going into the military? And um, sometimes I think no, sometimes I think yes. Um, Ultimately, I guess where I fall right now is I think that when the time comes, when my kids want to join the military, if they want to join the military, I'm just going to be honest with them. If they ask me questions about what it was like and what service is and what it means, and what it means in practical terms, in terms of how much it can suck sometimes, and how awful it can be to lose friends, to deal with really, really hard times. If they ask me those questions, I'll be honest, um, but I won't dissuade them. Um, and ultimately, it's their decision, and I'd be proud of them either way. It's tough to say for me. Like, I get conflicted on this question, and it's like, it's kind of weird. Like you start off on this. This is like the one of the heaviest questions for me, like right off the bat. I got a lot out of serving in the Marine Corps. A huge amount. I mean, a huge amount of my life now is arguably thanks to serving in the Marines, uh, and all that came from that. And I won't ever forget about that. You know, now that I'm out and I've been kind of reporting on this stuff and being a journalist outside of the military and seeing so much of the awfulness of, you know, sort of things that happen that are, you know, bad things that happen to service members, especially junior service members. Um, you know, it's frustrating and it really upsets me. And so that gives me some pause, I guess, about joining the military. But at the end of the day, I think that we need really smart, really good people to join the military, and we need to attract them. And I really hope that the military keeps working and improving upon itself and getting better. There was one thing that struck me like about a month or so ago. I was at a friend of mine retired from the Marine Corps after like 21 years, 22 years. And he had an officer was, you know, speaking about him, you know, lauding him for his accomplishments and things like that. And he told him, and my buddy, he didn't want to get out. He was actually, he was sort of like at the end of his retirement. You know, it's one of those, you got to retire now kind of situations. And the officer was aware of this, knew him well. And he said, look, you know, don't worry about us. You've done an amazing amount of things for our country over 20 years, so many accomplishments and so many sacrifices you've made. And there are plenty of people here that will pick up the baton and continue to carry the torch forward. And, you know, don't worry about you know, what comes next. There is always there. And so, like, I guess from that, I kind of look upon this and think, like, you know what? It doesn't really matter whether I'm conflicted or not about military service or whatever, whether my kids go in or whatever. It's a big machine, and the military will keep rolling along. And it's a train, and people jump on it, people jump off it, but it just keeps rolling along, and it will continue to go along. And change comes very, very slow, but it keeps going forward. I have a more optimistic outlook, I suppose, on it nowadays.
You have been reporting on military related issues basically since you got out. And you said in another interview something that I thought was interesting. You said that you never really got out of the Marine Corps. Like you didn't get off the train, so to speak.
Yeah,
Like maybe took the uniform off, but like didn't exit the train fully. What do you think was pulling you to stay with that?
I think. Well, skipping ahead, I think nowadays I'm really pulled a lot to military veterans. Most of my deepest relationships are often with veterans. You get really quickly to the point, I suppose, with a veteran is what I'm trying to get to. It's just a shared bond of a common background that it's I don't know, it's just nice. It's a nice bond to have, and I kind of value it. I didn't really realize the value of it when I first got out and I first got out of the Marine Corps. And over time, I'm like, as I've met more veterans and spoken with just a lot more service members from various branches outside of the Marine Corps, and kind of got this really interesting perspective from all over. I mean, I when I said that, you know, I didn't really get out of the Marine Corps. It's I got out, I went to college, GI Bill. I got out and I basically, I started Duffel Blog in college and also interned at, started an internship with Business Insider covering the military. And it was it just became a thing, where I got out of the Marine Corps and was very much like, okay, I'm going to have to figure something else out and find whatever the next thing is, getting out of the military, which I thought was going to be like business, like be some manager at, some corporation or something like that. And through a series of accidents, became a writer and started writing about the military and just never stopped. So that's like, that's really like my, my career in a nutshell. And then it's like along the way, I've the people who have read my work are, military members, a lot of them, and then they reach out to me and we talk, and I become, I follow more and more military members and learn more and more, and um, I just I just become endlessly fascinated by all these new things that I'm learning about this organization that I was just part of that I had no idea of. That's a lot of the things that I've done and worked on or written about. A lot of them are like just, my curiosity about a thing, or I like find out some new thing, where my sphere in the Marine Corps, like I would have never been exposed to that.
It is interesting how you often need to like step back from this fear that you talked about to really get a bigger picture on things that you maybe, you're writing on like national defense and all of these things now, but I'm guessing that that was not front of mind issues for you while you were running in the infantry. And I feel very similar. I talking to interesting vets, doing this podcast, writing and reading of all of these people, it sure makes you feel, or during at least my time in, I'm not going to speak for you or others, but my time in, it certainly makes me feel very close-minded about what I was going through. And even though that I thought it was really tough and all of this stuff at the time, now offers like a much different perspective once you get out and talk to other people.
I think though, you hit upon a really a good point, which is like, you know, in that small, little sphere that you're in, when you don't really know the big picture, it's really, it's really a bad thing. And I feel like that's a pretty common trait, for being a junior member of the military. I can't imagine, you working on the F-18 imaging systems. Like, people are telling you, at least any regular basis, like, hey, how this all adds up into the grand scheme of things, like kind of at least motivating you to show you like, hey, this actually matters. Like, you, to you, you just like, oh, I have this freaking job and I have to turn a wrench or whatever. And it was the same for me. When you're a grunt, they don't tell you like really much of anything. Like, we're going on deployment to Okinawa. Why are we going to Oki? Nobody tells you. You don't really know like the bigger picture. You just know it's going to be hot, and it's going to be miserable sometimes and stuff like that. And I think when you have a chance to at least distill some of that like bigger picture onto, like, bring that down, I think that helps you a lot, like in just motivating you to do your job. Like, one of the things that I guess I think about now is like, I'm really mission driven. I think that's something from the military. Like, I like to have a mission and like something that I'm driving towards, something that I want to accomplish, and something that's like a bigger picture, that's like motivating, that's not money, like everybody needs things like money, like health and, their family taken care of. But like, if you're going to do something all the time, or like a big majority of time of your day, like work, is it going to be something for like some bigger picture that's like driving you to do good? And my mission really is a like driving big picture. To me, it's a personalized one. It's like my family, and maximizing time with family, and like hanging out with them and being able to take them places and do things. That's so whatever I can do to enable that is um, is what I want to do. At least for me, I think like a mission is really, really important, to setting up for yourself, like even if that's on an individual basis.
Did you look at going into journalism as something that would be in support of that family mission that you're talking about? I think that getting out of this service it's very clear that that is not a great way to have a really outstanding and stellar family life. But
Yeah.
simultaneously, like working in kind of like maybe an entrepreneurial endeavor or something like where you're directly responsible every day for what you're doing there. And I kind of view writing as that way. That I don't know, it's probably you're coming home every night for sure, which is much different, but maybe challenging in kind of like a different way. Have you looked at journalism as a way to kind of still support that family mission?
Well, I guess I would say that the driver of me, it's changed over time. I mean, I'm 39 years old, and I've been married now for 4 years, and got two kids, two dogs, like very domesticated, and so my mission is pretty obvious. Like, that's supporting that. 10 years ago, when I first started in the journalism business, the circumstances were a bit different, and I was really brand new, and I didn't really know anything. I started out as an intern and at Business Insider, and my mission was basically like just try to get a job, get my foot in the door, really. And mission was, just scrap anything together to feed your family. That changes over time, I suppose. But I certainly wouldn't. I don't recommend the journalism industry for like endless riches.
I've been told that by many people,
Yeah.
but I will say that every journalist slash writer that I speak with, the quality of life that they speak to, I think outside of monetary gain is very clear to me. And I think that that's difficult to put a price on. We were
Yeah.
talking about transition a little bit before we started recording. And I think that there's this really big idea that you need to, you get out and you go get a job, and, you work that job so that you can do this next thing and you get this promotion or whatever. But it doesn't seem to me that there really is a focus on like things that you actually want to be doing in life, and like finding things that actually light your fire every day. And because I think that if more people were honest about that, they probably wouldn't be pursuing that path, and they can find other ways of like taking care of the home life and stuff by doing other things.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like the appeal of journalism and writing, uh, to me is really about being creative, being able to just be, I just love the idea that I can write about anything, saying like, here's what I want to do in my life. I want to write things and post them for people on the internet to read. Like, kid me couldn't even think of that. Like, it's like, that's nutty. It's, it's crazy that it's even possible. So, and but beyond that, I think the appeal is really like, I feel like I'm serving other people. I'm doing a a task. I'm using my experience and my skills and my knowledge to help other people understand the world. I'm taking really complex information about national security, or I am reading some really just crazy hard to understand, 200-page report from wherever. And then now I'm trying to translate that into 500 to 800 words of something that's, you not only want to read, but you're also really like entertained by it because I transformed it into a narrative. Like, I like that challenge of it, of doing that. And, ultimately it's like, just going back to that, I never left the Marine Corps thing, I'm serving a mission of like helping other people get smarter, raising up the collective level of intelligence in the Western world. It's, it sounds like lofty and kind of crazy, but it's like, it helps me, it helps set my work into perspective, like, hey, this can actually matter to people. And writing is a very lonely profession. It is like, when you write stuff, you have to find feedback, and it's, maybe somebody will message you or, text you or what have you, but, comments or whatever it is, like, when you get somebody that says, hey, this was really helpful, or this is really good, it's like a huge rush. It helps like make it all worthwhile, to where like, hey, I wasn't just, spinning my wheels and wasting my time. Like, someone actually read that and got some value out of it. I love it. I love the feeling. I love publishing new things. I just love creating and building new stuff. And especially when it comes to, national security, and just kind of what things are, what kind of things are happening in the world. Like, I I have to like remind myself sometimes, like, oh, I'm a weird person. I have, all these different feeds of information of like all those different events I'm kind of covering and seeing all these things. And when I go in my house and talk to my wife, I will have, if I mention any of these things, I'll have to explain more than I know, because like, I'm just, it's already in it, like, oh, developments in Somalia, yeah, okay, yeah, I've been watching that, like, it's um it's just, it's a weird place that I currently reside, but it's fun.
I think that you mentioned something there that I think is really interesting. Your awareness of the fact that you are in a unique position of all of these different feeds of information. And in a way, everybody is like, but the thing is we don't oftentimes know that. It's very easy to feel that like we're all kind of looking at the same posts and reading the same news. And I think it's for that reason that many people don't feel inspired, or that they have the ability to offer the world something unique. And especially like in the writing space, maybe it's the video space, in the creator space. We'll probably use that word a handful. It's a bit overused, but
Yeah.
we'll use it. How do you think that people can overcome that? Because I think that overcoming that and realizing that you do have something and everybody has something unique to offer the world is probably one of the keys that you need to unlock being a creator, I guess.
Yeah, I really agree with you. I think that, most everybody has something of value and something that's unique to share with the world. I see a lot of this on Substack, especially. Substack is a newsletter hosting platform where I host Duffel Blog and the Ruck, and it makes it really easy for people to write on the internet. I mean, they have really just simplified the process of what is essentially starting your own blog. It's just today's version of the blog. And, there's people I follow, this media executive that writes about, he's been in media for, 30 something years, and he's writing about tech and media and all these different trends. Just I can tell he's got a very fascinating uh, way of looking at things, and just a really, really good mind, really great thinker. And so it's really valuable to me. I love reading that stuff, and there's just so much out there. And I look at a guy like that and a lot of these different things, and also just going back to Duffel Blog, I think it really starts with looking around your own sphere of influence, or what your industry is, or what you like to do, and doing some basic research. Does something that you would like to see, does it even exist? When I was a kid, I I'm going to date myself, but when I was a kid, there was this website called GeoCities, which GeoCities was like you could create your own website. Like this is back in the day. This is like 20 years ago, Internet 1.0, and GeoCities is like anybody create a website, and so like it was like the weirdest websites in the world were on GeoCities. But I was a huge fan of Top Gun. Love Top Gun, and there was not a repository of all of the information about Top Gun that I wanted. I wanted all the photos. I wanted the script. I wanted the best quotes. I wanted like all of the I just wanted the greatest fan page for Top Gun. And so that was like the GeoCities thing. I just made that, on GeoCities. But like that's kind of how I always think about these things. Like, I guess, don't create for all these people that you don't know and will never meet. Like, create for yourself. If you're like in wherever you are, like you can tell whether there's a lot of people that are, um, like would be interested in this thing. Just like if you're, working at Amazon, um, and you're an Amazon worker, like working in one of the like the factories, um, that like if there was like an inside Amazon blog by one of the factory workers, like writing just like a post a week about what it's like to work at this place. Oh my God, that'd be an amazing read. It'd be so great. I would love to read that. Um, like just like um, insider takes are just are just really great writing opportunities. And I saw this a lot with military, especially with like military blogs, about a decade ago, with soldiers just writing about patrolling in Iraq, and going and doing things and doing civil affairs projects and all these other things. Like these started as just like simple blogs that are of not really of much importance, but when you really think about it nowadays, if I were to look up, like, I mean, one of the people, one person is that did this was a soldier named Colby Buzzle. I can look up his posts from the Iraq War, that he wrote when he was in country, 20 years ago or whatever it is. And it's a part of history now. We have this uh, great insight into the mind of a soldier from that period of time. And I love that. I'm just very much pro right, just write write about what you know, write about what you see. Not all of it's going to be fascinating and amazing, and maybe people won't like it, but you're never going to know unless you give it a try and see if it works. And if it doesn't, like, no big deal. It's like blogs come and go all the time on the internet, but I think everybody has interesting things to say about their lives, their jobs, their families. And it's just really a matter of finding the words to say it.
And I think the benefit is twofold. First and foremost, the value to be had from putting your thoughts down on paper and solidifying what those actually look like gives you unbelievable clarity about what you actually think. And just like the phenomenon of like thinking you know something and like going to write about it and realizing you don't know anything about it really highlights that. So that's the first and foremost. But second, I think especially if people are willing to share publicly, it's not a big stretch to find other people that are interested in it. And maybe even like maybe it's not for everybody, but there are people that make careers out of it. People writing on Substack, I know that make great livings doing that. And it's just stuff that they were doing anyway. And that actually allowed them to quit their job because they just were willing to share publicly. So I'm a big proponent of it as well. What was the original inspiration, I guess, for Duffel Blog? That was kind of your longest standing public project that you're working on and still running to this day. And I'm a big fan. I'm a subscriber. I love it. And I know that a lot of people listening will be as well. Where did kind of the inspiration for that come from? And I guess why did you think that needed to exist at that time?
Well, thank you for the compliments. I really appreciate it. Um, I get asked this question, as you can imagine, quite a bit. And I really wish I had some kind of, grand, awesome answer, like, Doc Brown or something. I fell and, boom, I just came up with the idea for the flux capacitor. But the idea for Duffel Blog, it essentially came out of an entrepreneurial venture. It was a side project that became the main project. And when I got out of the Marines, I felt sort of lost. Like, I didn't really know what I was doing, how to go to college, what that was going to be like. I did 8 years in the Marine Corps, so I was not totally to 20 years lifer status, but I was on the trajectory. And so just lost a lot of, like, I don't know. I call it how to be civilian, like, skills. Um, so it was just a weird time for me to get out, and so I went to the University of Tampa. I originally chose the major of business management, which, I didn't know anything about it. I just picked it because it sounded fine. And I got out as a sergeant, and I was, leading Marines. And so that seems to mean to me that I could probably lead people. But, in later research, I've learned that, the business management is a pretty standard degree. So I changed my major a little bit, and I ultimately ended up on entrepreneurship. And they had this program there that was basically all about starting your own business, and I found this very interesting, and really wanted to do my own thing. And I came up with the idea for essentially like a Yelp for colleges, like for the GI Bill. It was called collegeveteran.com, and it would be a place where veterans could check and see, like, how's the University of Tampa, what do the veterans on campus say about this one, what is I don't know, what is Yale like, are there veterans there, what's it like, or what's like UNC looking like, and kind of like the veteran rating system for colleges was the idea. And I pitched it in some competitions at college, and did pretty well, and kind of worked on that and made a business plan for it and everything. And this was all a time of learning for me about creating a business, about building a business, about um, uh, online writing and marketing. And one of the things I was learning about was content marketing, and blogs were, a lot of companies would basically have a blog as a way to attract people to their company's website. And that's how Duffel Blog started. Duffel Blog was the first blog, or the second blog. There was College Veterans, the actual blog about like the GI Bill, which no one read. Uh, and then and then there was a blog called Duffel Blog, which was just funny satire stuff that I just wrote up myself, um, and and modeled it after The Onion. And and really, my thinking was, my thinking on it was like, I really like The Onion. I think they're really, really funny, and they do an amazing job on so much. Uh, but I would always find myself reading like some article that they would write about the military in, and they would maybe mess up like the rank, or the uniform would be wrong in the photo, or something like that. And it seems so stupid and small, but it really matters to the reader of satire when you are pulled out of the joke, because you basically are sitting there and you're like, you read the thing, but then the writer basically makes an error, and it like makes it's like screwing me up in my own head where I'm not getting to enjoy it. And so I'm like, you know what? I can get the ranks right. I know the uniforms, like, this is easy, no problem. Of course, that's not, it was very, very hard. But, um, that was kind of it. I didn't really, I didn't have some kind of big long-term plan. I just thought that this would be fun to do, and it'd be funny to kind of crack jokes and write sort of news stories in a news style like that, but about the military, and kind of taking those inside humor jokes and writing news stories around them. Like I wrote stories about like cadences and stuff that I found really funny. Like there was one, like there's like cadences. We used to run around like, C-130 rolling down the strip. Like, and I know we've probably done Duffel Blog articles about like the C-130 rolling down the strip. Like we're creating some sort of fictional world around that actual C-130, and that's just like so fun and cathartic for the writers of Duffel Blog, like to kind of transform that thing. Because just in that instance, that cadence it's grating on so many people's ears at this point. We've heard it way too much. It's played out. We do not want to hear it anymore. And I'm just signing that statement. All of the junior enlisted, they all submitted letters to me and asked me to ask for the C-130 rolling down the strip cadence to be retired. So cut it out.
How long did you write Duffel Blog solo, and how many writers do you have now? How many subscribers do you have? You kind of give us like an idea of the size of it, and maybe where we'll do plugs at the end where people can go and find it, and I'll have that in the show notes and whatnot. But
So I started Duffel Blog in March 2012. March 2012, and was writing that, I think it was about once or twice a week, and was doing that for about a month or so. And then I got this email out of the blue from a soldier in Kuwait who was just bored out of his mind and was like, "Hey, and I don't remember exactly what the email was, but it was just like, hey, I'm so and so. I'm super bored here in Kuwait at like Camp Buring or Boring. I mean, it's boring. Like Camp Boring, Kuwait. It's probably how you're supposed to say it, or at least what soldiers pronounce it as." And he's like, "Can I write for you?" And I, at this point, I had no idea that anything like this was going to happen. It was sort of, in retrospect, it's like this, like, kind of lightning bolt moment, I suppose, of like, oh, this could be a place for military veterans to write and, be able to learn this new creative skill. Like I'm super proud of that now, but at the time it wasn't like that. But so like a month in, I got my first contributor. I added him on, and kind of contributors kind of came on over the months, and I vetted them in kind of various ways of how that rolled on. But the number has been as high as like over 100 at some points. Now it's probably around, I don't know, 50 or so. It's just kind of like we basically add people as writers, like it's kind of an application process. And then once you're in the club, you kind of get to stay in the club. And um, some people will write a lot, and then they like, life gets in the way. They, go on deployment or whatever, they just drop off and then they show back up again. Um, Other people write like hardly ever and then, send in gold, like, every 3 months. So it's a weird kind of system, but um, we have 20 over 28,000 subscribers to the newsletter, which is uh, our main avenue. Really, is the email newsletter now.
so you've obviously been running that for some time, and then you talked about being an internet business insider. You worked at We Are the Mighty, wrote at Business Insider full time, and then was the editor at Task and Purpose for some time. How do you think that your writing style has kind of evolved over that time? 10 plus years doing the same kind of craft. I would imagine that you're significantly better than you were first starting out.
No, I'm really bad.
Don't sell
I don't know
yourself
what the
short.
hell I'm doing. What's probably changed the most is I'm a lot more comfortable with making making my writing accessible to everyone. Um, when I first started out, I think like when I first started out, I wrote about the military, about national security. I had a lot of acronyms in my head. I have a lot of kind of like, I don't know, I just got a lot of things going on up here, and it's really hard to explain like the complex in a news story. It almost seems like really hard. Like how could I possibly explain nuclear weapons or the use of nuclear weapons or like the mutually assured destruction theory in a news story about military, like the new like about Air Force, Global Strike Command or something. Like I think as like a younger writer, might not have explained or contextualized things as much as I should have. And I think the thing that I've learned in sort of both ends in journalism and also in editing Duffel Blog too is I've applied it on both sides is I try to make everything accessible no matter who you are. I think if you look at Duffel Blog, um, Duffel Blog is very much catered to and geared towards military service members, but I never want it to be impossible for a person who has no military service to understand it. So that means writing out acronyms or if you're like it just things that maybe become like standard in news stories is like it's just shorthand. Editor doesn't even say it. Like editors like don't even worry about explaining it. I'm constantly questioning that from a reader perspective. Is like, are they going to know this? Like, are they going to get this? Because like the one thing that I hate when I'm reading is when I'm reading something and then I like come across some word or something like, especially it's like a word choice, and I'm like, I don't even know what the hell that means. Now I have to Google the word. Like writing to me is not some contest about showing how smart I am as a writer by using big words. It's it's about extending information to the person who's receiving it in a clear and understandable manner. And so I write and I try to write in simple language. I don't really like flowery, like just kind of over the top prose. It's just not my style. And I like to I really like I've gotten a lot better with narrative and telling an actual story. It's just far more compelling to start a story, something about something happening in the news with a story that a person can visualize. A good example is, a really great example is like, I remember I was writing this one story about this company that was doing they were making some kind of boat, like a really fast moving boat that they wanted to sell it to the US Navy. You can start out that story in a number of ways. You could say like, hey, the lead sentence could be like, this company just created this revolutionary new boat, or whatever, and that's compelling. But the way I took it was, I wanted the context of the boat up front. And so I started with like, the year is like so and so, and a ship was just attacked by Iranian gunboats. X amount of sailors were killed, and the ship was lost. This was a fictionalized scenario, but it was really war gamed in the year such and such, and this next boat could be the solution to that problem. Like, it's not exactly how I wrote it, but that's kind of like it was painting some sort of picture. It's like gives you that like, oh shit, as a reader, like, oh, this is real, like, wow. um because people are super busy, and I mean, I do it myself. Like if I'm reading something and I start to get bored, I leave. I don't continue it, like, and so that is my reader as well. And so I just try not to write sentences that are boring, and like that's the constant challenge is you're writing stuff. And then when you go back over it, you got to read it over and be like, and try to look at it with fresh eyes and think like, can I make this a little bit better? And that's like, I guess I do that all the time.
As a writer, how do you think about understanding like where the knowledge of your reader is versus like having to explain something every time? Because you, at a certain level, you're obviously having to assume that people know what you're talking about and there's like kind of a basic level of understanding versus like going back and like rehashing something kind of every time. Do you think about that?
Yeah, for sure. And there's like a cheat code for this in journalism circles. And if you are an aspiring writer, definitely should look this up. But there's something called the nut graph. So graph, like graf. Everything in journalism is kind of like it's this weird cutting off of letters for shorthand. So, but the nut graph is basically this is this is what accomplishes this, and you'll see this in most of the major papers. Everybody does this. It's basically like you start with your lead about, here's like the most interesting thing that I'm telling you about right away, like the news, the hook that's important about the story that you're about to read. And once you've delivered that bit of information about the first or second, one or two sentences, um, then you should get into what's called a nut graph, which kind of contextualizes the the thing in the bigger picture. It's like basically a sentence or two that tells you like what this is a part of. So, like for example, if there's an incident in the South China Sea, like China and the U.S. Navy, like we just had this where like a fighter jet and a spy plane, they came close together. So like the lead would be all about, these two planes came close to each other and they were 20 feet near each other. The nut graph would be about, you know, this is just the latest incident in after many years of tensions in the South China Sea between the United States and China in 2021 and 2018, da da da, and you kind of like characterize a few different incidents to show the reader like, hey, this actually happens a lot, way more than it should. Or vice versa, like, oh, you contextualize it where it's like, oh, this is totally new. It's like if that were the case, like that's the place where it's super important, and it only takes like a couple of sentences. So it doesn't take a lot. You don't have to really like beat a dead horse and over contextualize. It's like I think like always think back of from the reader's perspective, and uh, think about it this way: like if the person reading this thing that you wrote, this is the first thing that they've ever written from you. What do you need to tell them? That's the context that you need in every piece of writing that you write, especially on the internet. Like I have like just the distribution and how things work now. Like nobody's really going to a website every single day. People used to bookmark websites and then go to, like, they'd visit this website and then that website and then that website. Nobody does that anymore. People just go and scroll their social feeds and then click links, and then they go in their email and you click a link and you might go around. Like, nobody really understands like how or why they're viewing the things they do. It's just kind of part of their day. And you're catching them as a writer in between these moments. And so think of that person who's like kind of inundated. Like they need some kind of context around like what the heck is happening in that space. And so, if you're like a news writer, that means you need to give them all the context you need. If you're like a marketer or a business person, you should be, putting your, like, who the heck you are, explaining that, like what your experience is, having like a call to action at the bottom. um, because that's just the nature of the game these days, is that um, there's so much content that yeah, it's, you have to contextualize it and sort of do the work for your readers a little bit.
Hmm. That's really good. What else do you have? Like, if you have more to say on that, like, keep going, because I would love to hear more about. Like, I enjoy writing. I know some listeners also kind of in like the writing space as well. How else do you think about approaching like the 2023 reader or consumer of content, structuring and like making and distributing content, I guess, in the bombardment of short form video and whatever else we've got served up on our plate to take our attention?
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, there's so many different places to go, and I mean, like you said, the short form video is just it's wild. I mean, my Instagram feed is just nothing but video. It's sort of getting annoying at this point, to be honest. Um, but yeah, there's like a lot of avenues to create on the internet. I think the key usually is really it's there's no real tricks though. It's like it comes down to a few things. It has to be good. Like there's no tricks to the stuff. Like you can see stuff that goes viral and like there's spammy video accounts that are just, getting views to build up their account, but they're not quality. They're just garbage. The good stuff usually crowds out the bad, or at least rises up above the bad. And so, bottom line is content is king. You have to create good stuff, good things that people want to actually read, share, view, value. And then, you have to figure out where it's especially these days, it's all about trying to find the niche engaged communities that are for that kind of content. When you look at looking on Facebook, there's all these really like there's just a huge number of groups dedicated to just really different things. I'm kind of like, I kind of get surprised sometimes. You see this on Facebook, look on Reddit and all the different communities on Reddit around all kinds of, just you name it, the different topics that people are talking about and communities are being created around them. Um, it's really fascinating. And I think that, that's where like I think content is sort of coming around that community aspect. It's sort of going back to that, and that it's sort of a Substack thing. I think I'm very biased because I'm exposed so much to Substack, and I'm subscribed to so many Substacks now. But yeah, I think there's there's a lot of opportunities to write and do things on the internet. At the same time, 2023, AI, chat GPT, these writing tools, I'm also really like, I think it's going to be crazy this year with just a lot of bad content created and published and living on the internet. Um, so it's that could be also an opportunity. That could be, there could be so much bad stuff out there that now people are trying to find the good, or there's some Google has to surface the good over the bad and adjust its algorithm. I mean, I don't know how it's going to go, but I don't think that there's going to be uh, any lack of a need for good writing that endures, and that was true this year. I think it'll be true next year, and hell, I think it's going to be true in 5 years.
How do you think about knowing when you need to pivot or to maybe go in a different direction? I think something that I personally have experienced and talking to people just entering this space, there's this conflicting battle between people just saying, you just pick something and just do it for long enough and it'll work itself out. And then the people that are like, look for feedback. You were talking earlier about writing being extremely lonely and how much it means when somebody leaves a comment or writes to you and says thank you or whatever. That is like a sign of good feedback. But those two things are often conflicting and make it difficult to decide as somebody who's just starting out on what to do. Do you have any thoughts about that?
Yeah, I guess just I guess I would say, seek feedback. Feedback comes in all different forms. Feedback can be a comment left, a text message, tweets, people sharing your work on LinkedIn, even data on, the number of views on the article you wrote. It's all feedback. It all tells you something about what you're doing. At the data level, if you have 1,000 views of the thing you just wrote, well, hell, that's pretty cool. You got 1,000 views. That's really awesome. Like, keep doing that and see if you can keep doing it to get 1,200 views and 1,500 views. And you just keep measuring and continuing to look and seek that data and the validation. And if the numbers start to go down, then you adjust. It's like, and you like, when I look at it that way, and I think like, okay, if this next one doesn't do as well as this one, now I start to compare and contrast. What was the headline on this? What was the headline on that? Was it an image thing? Was it the content? Did I write about a different kind of thing over here versus there? Like, what was it that drove people to like, A versus B? So, feedback can come in all different forms. I think when you're just first starting out, anything and everything is great. Like, as much as you can get is going to be valuable, even if it's bad, especially if it's bad. If you're getting negative feedback, like, hey, this I don't really like this, it's not my jam or whatever, the worst thing you can do is get all mad about it. Most people won't tell you that. Um, most people, I know the internet is really, really mean. Most people in the comments are really awful, but most people in real life are nice, and they talk to you nicely and normally, and they don't say like, "Hey, you suck," and I don't like what you're doing. So I take it when people leave a comment on something I'm writing, and if it's some kind of negative, as long as it's not like some bad faith, like kind of trolling, that's a learning opportunity. Like, they took time out of their day to basically show, hey, look, I care about what I just read. I actually care about you, and I wanted to let you know that I care about you so much that I want you to get better the next time. And because most people, like, you read something on the internet and you didn't like it, you just close the page, you don't contact the author. like nobody does that. um, so you have to be accepting of feedback, good or bad, and not all, but you don't always adjust. And like, change positions on, where to go like every week. But, it all helps. I think the one thing that I started doing, I'd say in the past couple of years that I think has been really, really great is I do I survey people every so often. So at Duffel Blog, uh, I'll do like a reader survey that I set up in SurveyMonkey, and it starts out with like how likely are you to recommend Duffel Blog to a friend, which gives you this really great sort of metric of like value of whether people would promote you or not. And then it asks like a bunch of different questions, I think 5 or 6 questions, and gives them an opportunity for comments and like anything we can do better, worse, whatever. And what was amazing about this is I had a general feeling through just, hey, I've been doing this for a bit. I watch the comments. I'm responding to messages on Instagram and stuff like that. Like, I generally feel like people like Duffel Blog, and I can probably go in an interview and tell somebody like, yeah, Duffel Blog's really popular in the military. And, like I can, but I couldn't really tell you much more than that. The survey tells me, more about who they are, like the services that they are, like, like what it just gave me all these comments about what they really, really liked and admired. Like, it was amazing. It's super duper helpful. And the cool thing about it is it's standardized, so if you do the survey this month, 6 months from now, 6 months from now, from then you can really, it's measurable improvement instead of trying to like measure the wind of perception and coming up very short with trying to figure out the sentiment of your audience.
Oh, that's good. You gotta stay in touch with them and be constantly like looking for areas to improve. And I like that idea of kind of running the same thing every so often to kind of keep your finger on the pulse.
Yeah, and the other thing too with Substack that they just added is we can do polls in the story itself. So pretty much everyone now, it has a thing at the bottom that's like, share your thoughts on this story, and people can rate it. And it's like, it's not a popularity contest. I mean, we have a very diverse uh, readership, different services, ranks, all over the place. So not everybody's going to like everything, but it is a good way to gauge, like, if I had 2 3 stories in a row where people were like hating on it, I'm like, all right, well, maybe we're off kilter right now. We gotta figure out some better stories, maybe find something that's a little funnier, like I'm not doing a good job as an editor this week, like it's trying to find those ways to get feedback is like I said, it's hugely valuable, and just being able to listen to your audience is good, and they like it too, like it doesn't take a lot to just say okay, like thanks for sending that, like on the Duffel Blog emails, anybody can reply, and you can email. It doesn't require me to like send back some really big complicated response, like somebody compliments, say, hey, I love that story, I respond and say, hey, thanks so much, really appreciate your reading. And I know the feeling of what that's like, of getting that response. It's a good feeling when somebody who is the writer of the thing you wrote, or the editor, or whatever, somebody takes the time and actually responds to you, and says, hey, thanks, I appreciate that, instead of just like the tendency, I think, in in media is to like ignore a lot of everything, like ignore the readers, like screw the comments, let's not even talk to them. Like I I think it's hugely important to be talking to your audience, and it's like a two-way conversation. And like a lot of my sources, I mean, like people, when I launched the Ruck, a lot of people were were commenting, congratulations, it's awesome, so excited for you, this, that. And I was telling them all, I'm like, well, just let me know whenever I'm screwing up. Like I I don't need the congrats. I need people to save my butt and tell me when I'm writing something that's like totally stupid and doesn't make the most sense.
Yeah, well, let's talk about the Ruck. So this last year, you jumped to being a full-time writer, presumably, starting the Ruck on Substack. How is that going? Kind of maybe outline the premise of it, where you're at, and kind of, I guess, what you're looking to do with that over the next however long.
So I started the Ruck in August of last year, so it's not too old. It's only a few months old now. So starting out pretty slow, and we're up to just about 3,300 free subscribers, which is pretty cool. But it is a weekly national security newsletter, and I started it out with the idea of, hey, I was a Marine, I got out, and I have been covering national security now for 10 plus years. I have been an editor I was the editor in chief at Task and Purpose for 4 years. It's a long time to be out of the writing game, and I really, really wanted to get back into it and share my thoughts again, and especially share the things I'm seeing, and things I think are really important, especially with what's going on in the Pacific, that I just don't think there is nearly enough being attention, has or doesn't have nearly enough the attention that it should have. And this year, I'm kind of I'm actually at this like kind of crossroads of trying to figure out like which direction it goes and where to go with it. The When I first started it, and this is like the cool thing about a newsletter, and I think writ large, just being a creator, there's no rule book that says like if you start on one way that you have to continue and do that exact same way the next day or the next week or whatever. You can change things the very next day. Like if something you didn't like, or it's like just not working for you, just cut it off, and or add something new, the next time. And I was trying to figure out what the format would be. Like, is this going to be a like national security briefing thing? Like, here's the week, like here's what's going on in the world that you need to know about, like kind of a listing of bullet points, or do I want to make it more of my style of writing columns where I sort of report, but also sort of share my analysis, a little bit of my opinion on things. And right now, it's a bit of both. So I do both of those things in one email that goes out on Thursdays. So the top section is typically a column, and then the bottom section is like the week in national security news. It's kind of a lot. I'm thinking about splitting it up, or maybe like doing one or the other. I'm not quite sure which way I'm going to go. Yeah, it's one of those things that I'm actually kind of wrestling with right now, trying to figure it out. So, I will say if there's any readers of the Ruck and that are listening to this right now and prefer one or the other, please let me know.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll be sure to include links to Duffel Blog and the Ruck in the show notes. But yeah, I highly recommend it. I was just reading your post on the U.S. military pilots just the other day and was really enjoying it. And I like the element of kind of being able to explore. And like you were highlighting there, and from your perspective, you can kind of see what resonates and like also what is sustainable for you as a writer. There is the whole idea of like burnout. You could really work yourself into a pattern that is not sustainable for the long term, and finding
Yeah,
like a cadence that works for you and kind of fits with your flow.
I think a lot of people set up. A lot of people like look at goals, or they like they adapt for the goal they want to achieve instead of building systems. And so, if you have a goal of, like, I have a goal of losing weight this year, as probably so many of us do. It is January. Um, and I have this goal weight to that I want to get there, but like that's not enough. I also need to have a system of that says like I get up and every day at 6:15 I exercise 6:15 to 7 a.m. or something like that. Like that is a system that I kind of can set up and have that on my calendar day to day. And I think that's how it is for my for my work and for my writing, is like having some kind of system of, like when I see news and I see it in a lot of different areas, whether that's you're in the CNN app or you're on Twitter or wherever, like there's all these different places where you get your information as a consumer. And I had to figure out like where can I capture all of that in one place that I can access at a given time, so that when I'm writing the news rundown, I have it, and I don't have to go to like freaking 20 different places to try to search through this stuff. Like at the time I see it, I now have this, system in my head where I'm like, oh, I can share that off to Trello, and then it's on my Trello board, and that's where I go to find it. And so like, just building systems is like breaking down the the building blocks of the task you have, is like, I find it helps me get things done a lot easier and just more efficiently.
Mhm. Well, and getting it all written down kind of on paper, like a process or however you want to look at it, or maybe visually just seeing it, you're able to see like, hey, maybe this other step needs to be put in here and that will save this other time, or I can do these things at the same time. It allows you, rather than just kind of like, hey, I've committed to writing a weekly newsletter, and you just kind of wake up one day and like do it.
Yeah.
Getting it down on paper like that's a recipe for failure for sure. Just you got to figure out what the right process is, and then like you said, get it in a way that's repeatable.
Yeah. Or like outlining also is great. I highly recommend that if you're writing something, especially that's more complex, write it first in an outline format with just the basic kind of bullet point information of, if you're going to create a PowerPoint, what's going to be up on the slides. And I like, for me, I'd set that off to the left side of the screen, and then on the right is my like writing portion, and that's just my little cheat sheet. I'm like, okay, now I can write about that and expand upon that. And that also helps me a lot with getting through writing projects.
Is there any other tools or software that you like to use that help you with that process? You mentioned Trello. Is there anything else?
Yeah, Trello I like a lot, and I use that quite a bit. Trying to think of What else? There's this new app that I just started using. I think it's still in beta, but it's called mem.ai, and it's like a note taking app. It's like Evernote. I used to use Evernote a lot, and you know, Evernote got really bulky and it was just bloated with all kinds of extra stuff, and I stopped using it. And I was in this like wilderness of where do I put my notes, and went back to like Apple Notes. But recently discovered this mem tool, and it's pretty neat. I like that it makes it the capture of information is really easy. Like I can I'm basically like saving emails. Like people send me an email that I'm like, oh, this is cool. I want to save this. Just something I might access later. And what I can do is I can forward that to an email with some like hashtags, like this is information about China, hashtag Taiwan, and it will create a new note in my mem like notes app with the entire email in it with the tag. And then like, if I'm doing research on something in China, that email, I mean, if I like, there's no freaking way I'm ever going to find that like in Gmail ever again. But if I'm doing research on China, I just go and hit the China hashtag, and then I'll see kind of what I've researched, what I've written about there, capture there, and it uses AI, so it also will surface some other new stuff. And so far, it's a pretty neat tool. But other than that, I use Google Calendar pretty much, and I like time block. So I just whatever, if I have a task to do, I try to like time block what the timing of that is and just put it on the calendar, and that tells me, my brain, that's like, this is a thing that you should get on and actually get done and not procrastinate. So that's my method. It works for me. It won't work for everybody, but that's what I use. I would also highly recommend a Substack that I love. It's called Wonder Tools, and that's how I found the Mem tool. Actually, it's this journalism instructor. One of my journalism instructors actually at CUNY, and he writes about like lots of different software and apps and like new kind of cool stuff, and it's like a weekly thing. So a lot of times he's sharing these new things that have appeared that I've never heard of before. Oh, like actually, I'm seeing a new one on there, that on his page, that I also use a lot, which is Canva. Is just absolutely incredible for graphics and graphic design. If you're a creator on the internet, and if you're like struggling with Photoshop, you can put Photoshop away, get a Canva account, and this will, there's so many templates and tutorials, and like it just makes creating graphics really, really easy. I've been using Canva. Like Canva is, all of the graphics, all of the imagery of Duffel Blog, like this, how it looks, professional, is because of Canva, and just kind of how their tools are designed. It's really, really good. I'm like kind of surprised by how good it is, given that it's something that works in your web browser. That's like crazy when you think of how much Photoshop was the standard forever.
Yeah, I'm checking out this Wonder Tools Substack right now. This looks like there's a lot of good content in here. I'm gonna have to put that on my subscribe list, and I'll put that in the link to the show notes as well. Paul, this has been a really, really fun conversation. Learned a lot about writing process, your history, and for those of you who haven't checked out the Ruck or Duffel Blog, I'd highly recommend it. Where can people go to find you, or how can people, listeners or myself, be useful to you?
I think if there's a place I want you to go, it's just to subscribe to Duffel Blog and the Ruck. So those links will be in the show notes, so you can Google them. But I would love it if you read my work there at Duffel Blog. I am the editor, so I don't write as much as I used to. But what you're seeing there is the work of veterans, of active duty service members. It's really awesome that I'm I can't believe that I can say that it's been around for over 10 years. And so, yeah, I would love for you to read that. And also at the Ruck, wherever that goes, it's going to be, essentially whatever it is going to be my national security newsletter. And, I'll try to make it good. I always try to do that. So, um, so if you subscribe, I would very much appreciate it. And then other than that, I'm on all the social media sites under my real name, Instagram Paul Szoldra, on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. I used to be on TikTok. I'm not really on TikTok anymore. Deleted it. Highly recommend you do the same. but yeah. So if you do see me out there on social, please feel free to reach out, say hello, and if you listen to this, I'm here. I'm just a guy, so would love to chat.
Awesome. Paul, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time.
Thanks, Brock. Great to talk to you.
Thanks so much for tuning in today. Your listenership helps me better educate people like you and the rest of our nation's military, both past and present, on building a successful life outside of military service. If you're looking for more ways the top vets are leading more effective lifestyles, building businesses, and using the resources designed specifically for you, press here for a selection of some of the best clips. Be sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel to stay up to date, and I will be talking with you soon.